Kate, thank you so much for joining us.
So happy to be here. And I'm so happy to be getting to know you. It is such a treasure and a joy.
So can you just give us like if you're like, let's say folks have never heard of you, like, how did you get into this? What is your passion? Like, why do you dedicate so much of your time and energy into helping people with money?
I started my first business when I was 7. So I was like really into making money. I've been into making money my whole life, excited about it, fascinated about it, plastering my neighborhood with flyers about my various enterprises. Making my own money since I was 7. So I think I was sort of born for that for some reason. And then when my parents went through a divorce when I was 14, my mom got on this self-guided program of financial literacy because she realized at the age of 50, she knew nothing about money. And so for whatever reason, I was just really precocious and started reading the books that she was reading at the same time.
At 14?
So, at 14.
Golly.
So I got excited about the divine laws of prosperity and the law of attraction, and then rich dad, poor dad, and assets and liabilities. And then I started my first like official business round about when I was like 16, 17. And so I had been making more money than most people my age for a very long time. But because I didn't have on board like practical financial learning somehow, I was sort of in la la land. Like I was really good at spiritually bypassing and acting as if, because I had misunderstood the education, which is act as if you have the kind of abundance that you want. And instead I just spent as if I had the kind of abundance.
Oh, so it's act as if, not spend as if.
Yeah, I misunderstood.
Okay,
so I ended up in a lot of debt. And then the experience of healing that on an emotional level was what led to my first book, Money, a Love Story, which that ended up happening in a sort of an odd way. I never planned to be an author, but anyway, here we are. So, and I don't know what else I would do with my life because I'm not sure that I've only ever really had a job for 4 months.
Well, I mean, Broadway is an option. You know what I mean? So if this whole entrepreneur thing doesn't work out, you could do the easy path of 8 shows a week, 6 days a week, and kick in your face for a living.
Yeah, totally. So that's
and so
kind
now,
of the story.
What does your business look like now? And first of all, I just want to celebrate the fact that you were like, I loved making money, because it's like, even to hear a woman say that feels audacious to me. Like it's something I'm like, oh, because it's so unusual. And so I'm just highlighting and underlining that. And the only other woman I know who said that is Marie Forleo, when she made a video of her like at 10, when she would iron money. She would take an ironing board and just iron it because she wanted it to be like crisp and neat. And she really cared about like the physical dirty ass paper money. She would iron it.
So funny when she told the story about that. Well, so what I do now, I run my company with my husband.
Origin Company.
Yes, the Origin Company, though we are in the process of kind of like bringing that just back to the Kate Northrup brand.
Okay. I like it. I support that.
As I said, I like to burn
into the ground. You know what? According to the Vedas, this would just be like creation, maintenance, destruction. The destruction has to make way for more creation. Yeah. You love creation, so you got to burn some stuff.
Book in me that I'm like noodling. So it's, I got it. Well, I use the sort of like, if you have one of those closets with sections for shoes, you have to take a pair of shoes out when you buy a new pair of shoes.
Yeah.
So it's like that model.
Okay.
So one thing has to go before another one can come.
I really appreciate that. And is that how you feel like you avoid burnout?
Yes.
Okay. Like you don't just add new projects. If you're going to do a new project, something else has to go. I like to end things. I like to be done with them. I don't like to layer things on top because I feel the heaviness of it. And there's something intoxicating for me about the lightness of like closing something, shutting something down, deciding to stop doing something entirely. There's no better way to clear your plate than to stop doing something you were previously doing or to cancel something. It's the best. I need to hear this. I need to receive this transmission because I'm like a calendar hoarder. I'm like a course hoarder. I just keep making more of them And it is not sustainable.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure there are ways to do it. It's just not for me. And I think we need to know our own capacity. And I like to doodle around a lot. So I require a certain amount of puttering time every week.
And so what would you say you're helping people more with? Are you like, what percentage is like practical money, financial advice? And what percentage is spiritual, energetic, understanding your timing, understanding your rhythm, and entrepreneurship?
That's a great question. After Money, a Love Story came out in 2013, I basically didn't talk about money again until for like a couple years I did, because, yeah, right. But then after that, I totally switched directions towards do less and teaching women about their cycles and aligning your work with your cycle and productivity hacks. And then I just all of a sudden was like, it was so burning in me that I was like, I have more to say on money. And so that's where Money, Love, the Revival came and our program, Relax Money. So at this point, I would say I'm kind of 50-50. So 50% money, 50% time and work. So the whole umbrella, though, is healing your relationship with time, work, and money.
And what do you think what do you see as the biggest issue or the biggest problem? Like, what are you triaging most often, or what's coming up for folks right now that they need support with?
Well, I mean, the issue that they think they have is different than the issue that I think is underneath it. So I'll address both. The issue is scarcity and like fear of there's not enough
That's
time,
what they think, is
that's
what's underneath.
That's what they think. And underneath it is really, especially for women, I know that we have women and men here, people of all genders, but underneath for so many of us is actually a reckoning with our own power. So I learned this from one of my mentors, Barbara Hewson, which she wrote The Secrets of Six-Figure Women and Rewire for Wealth. And she taught me in my early 20s that anytime we are grappling with our relationship with money, it's because we're grappling with our relationship with our power. In the chakra system, money kind of hits the same physical, energetic area of the body as sex and power. So second chakra is money, sex, and power. And so they're all
second, like sacral. So not root,
not
sacral.
Root. Yeah. Root would be first. That's more like your sense of safety and security and family of origin. But second chakra is money, sex, and power. So sacral, uterus, reproductive organs, low back. And so it's all kind of the same thing. And it all has to do with my understanding. My more recent understanding is it has to do with our relationship to life force and the amount of life force that we feel safe enough to let run through our bodies and our lives. So to me, that's actually what our relationship with money is about. It's actually the same thing as our relationship with time and our work, because our work is life force made visible, our creations in the world. It's all about our creations. So, but really with the scarcity piece, it's really beginning to understand on a deeper level how there actually is more than enough at all times. We just need to start to see it and learn how to access it, and breaking up with the lie of scarcity. It really is a lie, and accessing the truth of abundance and that there is no such thing as the zero-sum model.
And so how would you get someone, let's say I'm in debt, my business is in debt, I'm personally in debt, I'm working 9-10 hours a day, and I'm running up credit card bills. And so like in this case, it's like, I believe that money's coming in the future. I may be acting as if and spending as if money's coming in the future, but right now, money and business is in debt. How do you get that person to see that there is money all around? And how do you like close the gap between money in the future versus like money in my bank account right now?
Okay, so there's 3 things I would say on this. First is just a little fun exercise and education that any of us can go do. And I highly recommend you do it. Go out next time you're out in the world, or you could really just do it where you're sitting right now. And I want you to see through the eyes of money flow. So some people in the world, whether they're born that way or they were trained that way, see money everywhere. Some people don't, but we can all learn this skill. So let's say you go to get your coffee in the morning and you go to the coffee shop. Here are just a preliminary list of currency exchanges happening in that space. You put your hand on the handle of the door. Somebody made that handle. They got paid. Somebody bought that handle. They got paid. Somebody installed that handle. They got paid. Somebody connected the handle company with the door company. They got paid. Somebody installed the door. They got paid. The person who owns the coffee shop paid the door people. Then the person who owns the coffee shop pays the rent to the person who owns the building. Then the barista behind the coffee shop counter gets paid by the owner. They get paid by the person buying the coffee. The person who grew the coffee beans hopefully got paid well to do so. And also the person who delivered the milk, the person who milked the cow or the oats, all of those people, like they got paid. The people who make the cup, the person who owns the cup company, the person who manufactured the cup, the person who drives the truck, who delivers the cup and the coffee sleeves and the lid. And that, like, so you begin to see that there is money everywhere. There's an exchange happening everywhere, all around you. There's a river running at all times, 24/7, and it is an abundant river. And you can either stand beside the river with your back turned to it, or you can put your toe into the river and stand in the river, because the river is happening. And when you start to look at the world through the eyes of money, you start to see all the things you didn't see before. It's kind of like if we had X-ray vision and you could see like the bones and the, you know, and the tendons and the blood vessels and all that stuff within the body. Underneath everything is the energetic flow of money. So that's number one. It's just like a mental retraining, because when you start to see the world that way, you start to see opportunities that you never would have seen before. So number one. Number two is to, if you're in a debt situation, which I was very much so, it's to really like what we do around debt is just so useless in terms of the amount of energy we spend on guilt and shame and heaviness around it. So I like to call debt invoices for blessings already received, because that whole, like, just when I say that, it's just like, oh, I just have some invoices for blessings already received. So when I was really on this journey, paying off my debt, I renamed I put a stick, I had my little label maker, and I renamed the folder invoices for blessings already received. And when a credit card bill would come in, when I was working on paying off those balances, it was just an invoice for a blessing already received. And it felt like fairy dust magic, just like on my whole finances. And I felt great about it. I was just like, I have already received those shoes and that personal development course and that dinner out and that trip, whatever it was that I spent money on that I didn't have the cash right in that moment. And I had the opportunity to experience it anyway, which is a profound privilege. You know, maybe the debt system isn't amazing. And I think we could probably really talk about that and the way people are preyed upon with credit card companies and student loans and all of that. Yep. And it's very important to get right with what is, because when we push up against what is, we create unnecessary friction and resistance. What we resist persists. So if we are constantly feeling bad, feeling guilty, feeling heavy around our debt, we're only adding energy to debt. But if we are paying in the active process of paying off our invoices for blessings already received, we get to be in the experience of actually enjoying those blessings. Why would you buy something on a credit card or student loans or whatever it is, or get a small business loan? Why would you do that and then rob yourself of the experience of actually experiencing the thing you chose to buy by beating yourself up for the fact that you're in debt? It's just silly. So invoices for blessings already received. And I recommend, just real practically speaking, build up 2 months of living expenses while you pay off the minimums on all your debt. And then and only then start to pay more than the minimums. Why? here's what most people do. Most people are acting as though debt is like trying to drown them, and they're just paddling for their life. And so anytime they get in money, they just try to pay off debt because they're like, it's on fire. I need a bucket of water. But then what happens is any unexpected expense that comes up, which it inevitably will, that's how life is, right? Your boiler needs to be replaced. You pop a tire, somebody needs a medical something, then they're right back, right? So, but if we build in abundance first, 2 months living expenses in the bank, then we're like, oh, I'm experiencing abundance. And from a place of abundance, I will then begin to chip away at these invoices for blessings already received. So I really recommend that. And then the third thing I would say is to go back and do some forgiveness work around the you who spent money you didn't have. Because like you did, and it's okay. And so many people do that. Also, there really is such a thing as investment debt. And some people have this mindset where like any debt is bad. But the truth is, like, I know if I'm going to buy something that I don't have the cash for, if I know that that thing is going to help me pay that back and then some, it's still totally worth it.
Wait, can you say more about that? Like, what's an example of something that would help you pay what back?
Well, I mean, I think like medical school, right? I'm not going to medical school, but it's just a practical example, right? People take on debt. My friend is an endodontist, so he does root canals. He took on $700,000 in student loans, and he knew he didn't have that money at the time, but he knew he was investing in his education, and based on what an endodontist makes, he knew he'd pay it off, which he did. So that's very practical, real life professional example. And some people might feel that way about coaching. Some people might feel that way about investing in their healing work. I can't be the arbiter of that for people, but it is an important question to ask yourself before you swipe your credit card. If you have a credit card balance, and ask yourself, do I feel like this is an investment that will pay me back financially or otherwise more than the interest I'm going to pay for the privilege of having this before I actually have the cash?
Yeah, I love that. That seems like a great decision-making matrix, because otherwise you're just lumping it all in like red or black, right? Is it more debt or is it more savings? But rather to have the matrix around, is this going to move me towards where I want to be, either debt-free, either financially free or emotionally free or healthy? Is this moving me where I want to be? Or is it like a temporary addiction or temporary pleasure?
Exactly. Like, is it shoes? Or is it like, I started my business on credit cards. It was fine. Worked out. Like, I don't know. I had a lot of guilt and shame about it at the time. But in retrospect, I'm like, where businesses need capital. It's like maybe I could have gotten a business loan or something. I didn't know what I was doing. It's fine.
So and then how long did it take you, just if we can go like brass tacks, how long did it take you to pay it off? What, what did you spend in credit card, like, in the interests?
Yeah. So I graduated I graduated when I was 22 and I didn't have debt, but then I racked it up between the ages of 22 and 27. It totaled $20,000, which is not in my life today, is like literally. However, at the time, because, I was making like $34,000 a year. So at the time it felt gargantuan. Yeah. So this is really important about money. It's kind of just made up. And the impact on our finances is far more emotional than reality. So it's very important to know that the amount of money doesn't actually matter. It's how it feels to you that matters. And that felt gargantuan to me. Yeah. It felt really heavy until I kind of like did some of the work that I was just sharing with you. I don't know how much I paid in interest over the years. It's a great question. I wonder if I could figure that out. Definitely thousands and thousands of dollars, because I just ignored it for a very long time. I just sort of thought that somehow if I I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what I thought, but I just was like, maybe if I don't pay attention to this, it'll magically go away.
We put our attention on grows. And if I ignore this debt, it will go away.
It was very spiritually bypassy. Yeah. Yeah. I was like working with the divine laws of prosperity. And I was like, somehow it's just going to magically. But then when I combined, I heard this proverb that says, as you pray, move your feet. And I realized, I'm not doing the moving my feet part. I was in terms of making more money, but I was not in terms of tending to what I already had and creating strong systems for what I already had. Yeah. And so what ended up happening is I did a lot of the work that I talk about in Money, a Love Story. I did all of it because that's why I wrote the book, but that book is based on that work. And it was the inner work around reckoning with my own value and really my own power and stepping into a place where I took myself more seriously and saw my value in the world. And when I did that, it changed the way I behaved. And over the course of about 6 to 9 months, I was able to pay off all my debt, double my savings, and like triple my income, because of that internal work. So yes, it's important to create a plan, to have your finances organized, but I think it's even more important, or just as important, to really be excavating your beliefs and your feelings, and also your nervous system set point patterns around your relationship with money. Because if you don't do that inner work, the outer work doesn't stick.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't talk about. And I'm so glad that you are, because there's no shortage of money books and investing books and debt clearing books. Like, there's plenty of them. But at the end of the day, like, if the internal movie projector is playing a movie of like, I suck, I'm poor, I'm in debt, I don't understand this, I'm not smart enough to get it, this stresses me out, then like, how on earth do you expect your bank account to be reflective of anything other than that internal dialogue? So I hear you speak a lot about the nervous system set point. Can you just share like what that work looks like if someone wanted to work with you in that capacity? How would they, like, how do you reset your nervous system when it comes to money?
Yeah. Well, I fell into that backwards. I did not know about the nervous system when I wrote Money, a Love Story. But what's really cool is some of the strategies I share in there actually are very healing to the nervous system. I just didn't know that. So one of them is, which I recommend everybody does if they're working on healing their relationship to money, is to check your bank account balance every morning at the same time as tuning in to something that already feels abundant in your life.
Will you say that one more time?
Yeah. So check your bank account balance every morning at the same time as you are getting into a frequency of abundance, like looking around your life. So let's say this was back when I lived in New York in a studio apartment, and my bank account balance was often in the red. So it's not like I was like bawling, if by any stretch of the imagination. So some days, like, I actually had no money, and I would just look around my apartment and be like, like, I really love that throw pillow, and the bird is chirping outside my window, and I have running water and it's clean, So just really getting into some gratitude for the abundance that already exists, and then checking the bank account balance. If you have a set point of fear and anxiety and lack with money, that simple practice every day will start to soften and expand your capacity to feel safe and grateful, and even maybe to have a feeling of pleasure, or, just any kind of abundant feeling when it comes to relating to money.
This is literal gold. Can you celebrate what is? Can you give thanks, like enthusiastic gratitude for the fact that your water is running and clean, the fact that you have the money to buy that throw pillow? And then from that place, then you recommend that people check their bank account every day. Is that correct?
I do.
You're looking at it.
I do, because if you think about, so money is really just energetic. In the United States, we went off the gold standard in the 40s, which means money is made up. It is based on nothing other than our collective agreement to play the game. It is a game of pretend. So when we know that, and everyone's just playing, which is great, but we just have to know it's made up. And so anything that's energetic like that, you're going to have a relationship with, and there's going to be an energy, just like there's an energy between you and your partner, and there's an energy between you and your kids, and there's an energy between you and your coworkers. There's an energy. And if we were wanting to create a more loving marriage, for example, if we were completely ignoring our spouse and never looking them in the eye and never spending time with them and never acknowledging anything they said, not saying hello when they walked in the room, not saying goodbye when they left, and just like pretending they didn't exist, the relationship would suck and it would end. But so many of us do that around our money. Like we don't pay any attention, and then we expect our money to suddenly show up for us. And so instead, we want to practice small, doable ways at first of putting loving attention on our money. So that checking your bank account balance every day is how I started. I was doing a yoga teacher training at the time, and I had been assigned to do every day meditation and pranayama. So I would do my meditation and my pranayama, and then I would check my bank account balance as part of my spiritual practice.
Yes. Well, good news. You guys got 2 opportunities a day to check your bank account balance.
Amazing.
So, right. So you meditate, you do all 3 M's, you do your mindfulness, you do the meditation, you do the manifesting. Maybe you're even manifesting on like how good it would feel to be more abundant than you ever thought possible. And then from that space of possibility, of trusting what is on the way, then you can look at what is. And I love that, like acknowledging when things come in, when they leave. Hello, goodbye. Thank you. Thank you for the time that I had you in my stewardship. Goodbye. I hope that this I love the idea of energetically laundering our money, right? That like, how did we change the frequency of it when it was in our care?
Oh my God. I love that so much. How money is changed through us.
I want to share with folks. So on Monday, I was going through I had a bit of a surprise. My VP of finance and I met, and we were going through the profit and loss at Ziva, and our bookkeeper quit very suddenly. It was like, like an agency, like a bookkeeping agency, and they went bankrupt. And when your bookkeeper goes bankrupt, you really gotta scrub those books. Like, why don't we just spend a little bit of time on our profit and loss statement? And it had been a few months since it had been reconciled because we're looking for a new bookkeeper. And the number at the bottom, like the bottom line, if you will, said negative $26,000. Now we're halfway through the year. I'm nobody's, MBA major. I don't have a master's in business or anything, but I'm pretty sure that halfway through the year, you don't want to be $26,000 in the red. And so I called my dear friend Kate and I said, hi, I'm in a bit of a mayday. I feel like this is an opportunity to have some creative thinking, to pull the lens back and really like use this as an opportunity to innovate. And so Kate was so generous, gave a whole hour of her time looking at things, asking me questions. And one of the exercise, Kate, that you walked me through, I'd love to share that with everyone today. And then I have follow-up questions on it.
Okay.
So the one that I'm talking about is where you had me, where you asked me, how much money would you love to have in savings? And I was like, okay, X amount of dollars. Let's say it's like $5 million. I'd love to have that making money put away, as like a safety fund, something I could hand on to my child. And then you said, okay, what in your life are you not doing that you would be doing if you had?
Yeah, there's something else. Here's what you said to me.
Uh-huh.
You said,
yeah.
You said, I want to have this amount of money in the bank because, is it okay if I tell you,
please,
if I say why? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've said all the things that you said already. So I'm assuming it's fine. And you said, because at that point, then I would be able to really have the freedom, the peace of mind to know that I only need to work on only the things that I really want to work on.
Yeah, like the things that I want to bring me my highest excitement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
no more looking at like return on ad spend. No more like the nitty gritty of the business. Like is not. I am being a channel and teaching and in my highest zone of genius.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I had a thought that like once I have that amount of money in the bank, then I can use my time only for the things that are my highest excitement. Yes.
And then you challenge that. So I'd love for you to share with people.
I did.
Yeah.
So we have this idea that a certain amount of paying our dues and a certain amount of, like, I'm going to be extreme and say a certain amount of suffering is required in order to give us the right to be in our fullest expression, to be in our fullest joy. And quite frankly, that comes from thousands of years of primarily Judeo-Christian programming that was designed systematically to get people to be obedient to higher structures so that they could have the power, and so that people would be brainwashed to believe that they need to suffer a certain amount in order to be worthy of essentially the afterlife. And the reason that these structures have done that so successfully is that people who are thinking that they have to struggle in order to be valuable and worthy of the afterlife, which, by the way, in our modern circumstances is more like be worthy of being happy in this life, even though there's still that religious stuff. When people believe that to be worthy, they have to struggle a certain amount, they manufacture struggle for themselves. And then no one else has to do it. And then they are exhausted and they keep exhausting themselves. And then they are very easy to control. And so anytime we have a belief that we think, is that true? Right? Just the work of Byron Katie, just asking, is this true? I also recommend asking, who benefits from me believing this?
Who benefits from me believing that I have to struggle in order to be worthy of money?
Which systems, which structures, because usually it's not like a single person.
Yeah. As much as we want to believe there's some like evil mastermind, it's usually just
it's
like,
not, pretty much. And these systems and structures live within each of us.
Yes.
Right. They're internalized, the internalized patriarchy, internalized white supremacy, all these things. So usually it's a system that lives in us. And the good news is when it's a system that lives in us, it's a system we can dismantle within us and be liberated from it.
Yeah. And it feels like that is the premise of, I don't want to make an assumption, but certainly the premise of my work, that it's like, if we want to change the circumstances, we will have to change the state of consciousness from which these circumstances have been created. Thank you, Albert Einstein.
Yes. Thank you.
And so, we could be focusing on, the infrastructure, and thank God some people are, but like our zone of genius is up-leveling the state of consciousness, like changing that internalized struggle, that internalized misogyny or capitalistic, like you have to produce in order to be worthy. And something I'd love to just highlight is that according to the Vedas, which predates Hinduism, right? It's that 24-hour-a-day bliss is your birthright. And everything else is stress. Anything keeping you from that is stress. Versus even in Buddhism, the idea is that life is suffering.
Yeah.
If you can transcend your desires, then you transcend suffering. And that feels like an important philosophical thing to look at, because you're very right. Because our current, like Western, certainly United States society is sort of steeped in this Judeo-Christian belief of like suffer now for the payoff of heaven later. It's like, how do we reverse that and instead start to be vessels and channels to bring heaven here on earth right now? And I know, like, just from following your work, like you are able to do that and to change people's frame of mind about their time and about their money, that actually allows them to experience heaven on earth right now. Because that's like one of the biggest lies that people tell themselves. I'll be happy when I have more money and when I have more time. So can you speak to us about the relationship between time and money?
Yeah. So time and money are both very precious resources. Time, however, is non-renewable in linear fashion, although I think it's sort of renewable in a certain way. And money, though, is a very renewable resource. Mm-hmm. And what happens is people, if you ask somebody what's important to them, they'll tell you, right? They'll tell you my family, my health, the planet. And then if you really want to know what is important to somebody, what they're valuing, take a look at their credit card and bank statements and take a look at their calendar. What you are actually valuing is right there in black and white. So that can be quite sobering. It just is true, though. Usually I candy coat things. This one is just like, if you want to know what you value, you look at that.
And if what is on your bank statement and on your credit card statement, what you're spending money on and what you are voting for with your time, your least renewable resource, if that doesn't match with what you know to be true is important to your soul, then you are living fundamentally out of alignment. And what I love about money and time, they are such 3D concepts that people can really look at. If you want to learn about your relationship with power, if you want to learn about your relationship with your own self-worth, just look at how you're spending your time. Look at how you're spending your money. It's this feedback loop that's so immediate and relevant to our daily lives. And so we can get really practical about shifting our relationship with our money and with our time, and our life actually changes, as opposed to other more ephemeral relationships that can be a little harder to track. Is this working or not? Yeah. So as a practical New Englander, I just like dealing with stuff that we can sort of touch and see, even though I am an advocate for the invisible.
Oh, I love that. That should be a t-shirt. I'm an advocate for the invisible. So I'd love to bring us back to this exercise that you walked me through.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I'd love for you to I'd love to hear it from your words. And then I have follow-up questions about it. Okay. So I heard you say, okay, Emily, make a list. Once you have this magical number in your bank account, this, perceived heaven on earth, this afterlife, once I have X amount of money in the bank, then I'll really prioritize my zone of genius in my business. And then I'll really do everything I want to be doing. And you said, make a list of the things that you're not doing now that you think you would do if you had this magical number in your bank account. And it's probably not that long, and actually put numbers by it. And so, for example, maybe getting a fancy RV at Burning Man, or, I'm doing a little bit of a refresh on my apartment right now because I'm here for another year. Maybe I would really go for it in the refresh, or maybe I would take my son on a trip to Africa, exciting things that in my mind I've said, well, that's too expensive. That's pushing it, which is really more of a commentary on my deserving power, or what I believe that I deserve right now. So anyway, the idea was make a list, draw out the numbers, and you're and with probably a few tweaks, you could likely do most of those things right now. And even the exercise is so liberating. So I would love to give that homework to folks, but from you. And then my follow-up question will be, so let's say I did that. Let's say I bought 2 tickets to Africa for my husband, my son and I really went for it on my on my house refresh. Let's say I did all those things, and then I get myself into financial trouble. What's the difference between living in the frequency versus oh crap, now I'm in credit card debt and I'm spending more than I'm making?
Okay. So money is made up. It is completely pretend. And so the idea that, there's a couple of fundamental principles. The most important one is this. The reason we want things is because we think that having those things or those experiences is going to make us feel a certain way. And I say this next part with full permission that you get to have everything you want. And every single way we want to feel is available to us right now, without anything needing to change, without us having anything additional materially, and without us having any other experiences or other circumstances in our lives. That is the ultimate liberation, is to know that any state of being that we want is available right now. Now, we may not have the exact tool to know how to access that, because I am aware that I have been in the depths of anxiety or depression or despair, and it did not feel like joy was available to me right then. But the truth is, physiologically speaking, it is. And so what's great about that is we can know that information and also simultaneously give ourselves permission to have what we want, knowing that, let's say you take the trip to Africa, right? Life is a mystery school, and chances are very good that you will have a different experience than you anticipated on that trip to Africa anyway. So we still get to have what we want, and likely it's going to be different than we thought. Better, different, more varied, whatever. And so when we can detach ourselves from the illusion that the only way we can have what we want is through those paths of like the upgraded home decoration, the nicer RV at Burning Man, the tickets to Africa. If we can like really come into the truth, which is that I get to have what I want, also every way I want to feel is available to me right now, then we lighten up the whole thing and it goes from like sphincter energy to flow energy. And money really likes flow energy. Yeah. We just get to turn on the faucet. So the irony, it's like such a paradox whereby the very way we open ourselves up to more abundance and more plenty is by lightening up around the whole thing and opening our palms, letting go, really letting go so that we can then receive.
So this feels so outrageously true. And thank you for speaking the truth. And thank you for the reminder. And I'll just back this up with a few facts. So when I was married, my ex-husband handled a lot of the logistics for the business and for our home and handled finances. And he was older than me and more experienced than me. So he had like more money than I did. And so there was a psychological weight. Like when I was married to him, I was like, oh, he has got it handled. Like he's handling logistics. He has a nest egg. Like there was just this like constant safety net, peace of mind, like it's handled, and that provided me an extraordinary amount of freedom and ease and possibility, as I was starting Ziva, to which I owe him an enormous, enormous debt of gratitude for exactly this reason that you're saying, right? Like I had the privilege of being in flow and possibility because I sort of knew that was there as a backup plan, that like should shit hit the fan, like my family would be okay. Yeah. And I know a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people who don't have parents who came from money or aren't partnered. And then when we got divorced, not only was I now like in charge of all the logistics of the business and in charge of all the logistics of the household and the financial, but also that like safety net went away, both like energetically and financially. And it was very interesting to see what would happen. I was like, I really don't know. Like, let's see. Thankfully, like Ziva did continue to grow. And last year I took a 2.5 month sabbatical and Ziva had its largest year ever. And so like, I'm saying that as like, to back up what you are saying is that it is possible, even if the 3D circumstances create something that could be sphincter-like, you can, in fact, choose flow. You can, in fact, choose surrender. The money is represented in the Vedas by Lakshmi, who is the goddess of abundance. And she's like a hot trophy wife. She wants to be like taken out on the town. She does not want to be kept at home. She's like gold and shimmery and like, this is why I wore this top. I felt like the Lakshmi energy. And so it just feels like money wants to flow, what you said, and that we can choose to be in the feeling that we think the money will bring. We can choose that right now, and we can have what we want.
Both.
And paradoxically, the being in the feeling attracts it because we attract what we are, not what we want.
Always, every time.
Mm-hmm.
Always, every time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we have this idea that like it's the when if. When I have, not when if, when then thinking. When I have, then I will.
Yeah.
It's always now, like I am this now. And then all of life just reorganizes around that to bring in what's needed to support it. But you already let yourself feel that way. So then it's already here. And then it can just be like delight and surprise of all the different 3D things that show up to then support it.
So can you give us some examples of this? Like I worked with a woman, like I say you worked with a woman who was like a single mom, 2 jobs, and she adopted like an I am and something shifted. Like I'd love to just believe that this is possible. I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone that's like, the economy is crashing. My freelance business is drying up. I can't afford this. Like they're in that headspace. How do you shift that in real time into the I am so you start to become a magnet for what you love?
Okay, so we have to talk about the nervous system in order to answer this. And I have a very specific client in mind who I want to tell you about. But before that, so much of our industry is mind first. And that can be effective, except what we know is that 80% of the communication between our nervous system, which includes the brain, but let's just pretend it's like the nervous system is in the body and then the brain is in the head. 80% of the information is going from body to brain, and only 20% of the information is going from brain to body. So we live under this.
Underline that, because I do not think that I know that people are like, oh, the gut is the new brain, but that feels like I did not know that 80-20. So I just want to double click on that. We say it one more time.
Yeah. And I'm happy to provide a resource for that. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I have it in my files. So I like accreditation. So I don't like to just like say random shit.
I believe
80% of the information is sent from the body to the brain, like communication wise. Mm-hmm. And then 20% is sent from the brain to the body. So we think our head is in charge. Our body is in charge. Now, both the brain and the entire body, the whole network of nerves and the spinal cord are all the nervous system. It's all one system. It's all one. So even this whole like mind-body disconnect is also an illusion. However, we're so intellect focused that we really need to understand that there's only so much we can do with our minds to overcome what we are feeling. Feelings, we cannot think our way out of feeling a certain way. So if you are feeling anxious, if you are having a feeling of contraction, if you are having a physiological feeling of fear, you cannot think and talk your way out of that. That is a part of you that's asking to be seen. And so my recommendation is to actually, instead of just trying to bypass it and push it down or think a better feeling thought, or like for me to tell you a story that's going to give you hope, which I'm going to do in a minute, I do recommend to actually allow yourself to feel that feeling, to transmute it. Because what we know is that in general, if you actually let yourself feel something, you're only going to feel it for 90 seconds and then it's going to turn into something else, because that's just how we're wired. And so, for example, if you're feeling anxious, put on a song that's like really fast and kind of like tense up your whole body and do like a whole anxiety dance, and then let yourself actually do it, because so much of our stress is actually, and this is based on the work of Emily and Amelia Nagoski in their book Burnout. So much of our stress and our burnout is actually caused by open emotional stress loops that we didn't have the tools, the time, the resources, the know-how, the support to actually close those stress loops. So if you have all these open emotional stress loops from your history, from what happened at lunch, from whatever, the best way to find a place of wholeness and power is not to think a new thought. The best way is actually to close those emotional stress loops. So it's just the same as if like the inside of you were a browser and you had like 3,500 open browser tabs. It just like weighs down the operating system. That's how most of us are going through our lives. But every time we allow ourselves to actually feel the feeling we're having, not think about the thought of the feeling, but actually feel the feeling, we close those browser tabs. And our operating system just gets cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And we have more and more bandwidth to actually feel joy.
Oh, so, with Ziva, we are de-exciting the nervous system. We are giving the body rest that's 5 times deeper than sleep. And it is closing down those tabs. But because people think of meditation as a mental activity, I just want to highlight that it is actually doing this for your whole body and for your whole nervous system, which is amazing. And then actually, this is why I'm such a cheerleader for the detoxification and the unstressing process that happens after Ziva, because it's training you of that better out than in concept, that we have to actually feel our feelings, that feelings are meant for feeling, right? So the emotional alchemy, sometimes we talk about, this is what Kate is saying. Like if you're feeling nervous, instead of being like, I am confident, I am calm, and overriding, which doesn't effing work, feel the nervousness, put on like Flight of the Bumblebee or something and buzz around your room. Love it. Or if you're feeling rage, like put on 9 Inch Nails and rage it out. If you're feeling sad, put on whatever, like a soundtrack to the saddest movie you can think of and just wail. Beaches, yes. The Fault in Our Stars, Dying Young, like just let it rip. And then guess what happens right on the other side of that exorcism is bliss chemistry. And to your point earlier, Kate, where you're like, you actually can feel joy right now.
In 90
okay.
seconds, probably.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
Okay.
first that, feel your feelings. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling fear, that's righteous and great information. And you get to move that through your body. Okay, awesome. Then it's to really, like, the cool thing is all those things we just talked about are very regulating to the nervous system. So the nervous system regulation does not mean feeling calm. Nervous system regulation means being at choice. And I saw Dr. Britt Frank say that phrase more or less. And so I love that so much, because we can think about, like, people who are talking about the nervous system are like, oh, the whole point is to be relaxed all the time. It is not. It is not. The nervous system has this beautiful, it's called the range of resonance by my teacher, Tel Darden. So the range of resonance is, we have one end of the spectrum, which is hyper, which is like, I'm doing a lot of things, I'm anxious, I'm in fight or flight. And then there's hypo, which is, I am in collapse, I cannot get out of bed, the covers are over my head, don't call, don't text. And so we have hyper, we have hypo. Each one of us will go in different versions of those things when we are dysregulated. But the idea is to be in our range of resonance. And our range of resonance is when things happen in our lives and we can actually have an experience of them and be at choice in our response. So we can let it move through our body and through our nervous system and not go into fight, flight, freeze, fawn for very long. Like, maybe we might pop in and then we know that we can come back to the suppleness of somewhere in between. And the amount of range of resonance we have is based on a nervous system set point of the sort of thermostat reading from our childhood. So the environment in your childhood, not what was happening, so not the content, but the feeling. So two different people can have very different content experiences, but actually have a very similar feeling. So in our world of identity politics, we can get very attached to the content and identities and labels. But in the world of the nervous system and in the language of the body and the psyche, all of that stuff is irrelevant, because our body speaks in feelings, our nervous system speaks in feelings. So you can let go of the language, it's irrelevant. And so think about, like, what was the thermostat setting of the general vibe in my childhood experience? Like, what was the room tone? When people are doing the audio, when you're on a video set, they say, everybody please be quiet, and they actually record the room tone. So if somebody were to record the room tone from your childhood, what would have been that general tone? And then you kind of know that's your thermostat set point in your nervous system for what feels familiar. And your nervous system registers everything that feels familiar as what is safe. So it doesn't necessarily feel good, but it feels familiar, which is why we essentially Xerox over and over and over again our reality, unless we get conscious and do something else. We will just continue to repeat and repeat. We date the same person over, we date our father over and over and over again. We have the same friend who's just like our sister over and over and over again. And it's like, why am I still doing this? Because your nervous system feels safe doing this, because it knows it. And so when it comes to money, just coming back to the topic we're on, when it comes to money, we will recreate the feeling that was the general room tone in our childhood around money. Now, you might have grown up in a household where there was actually a lot of money technically, but a feeling of scarcity, which is where we get into all of the stuff that the content doesn't matter. Because if your parents were in constant stress about money, even if there were technically high numbers, you will have a room tone, nervous system, thermostat setting of scarcity. You might have actually grown up in a household where maybe there weren't hugely abundant resources, but where your family really felt trusting and really was resourceful. And so you might actually have a setting of more abundance and plenty than somebody who grew up with tons of money, because it's not about the amount, it's about the feeling of the amount.
Ugh. This feels really, really mind-blowing. Like, thank you for highlighting those differences. Not about the amount, it's about the feeling around the amount. So
Yeah,
key.
because it's all pretend. Money is just pretend. We made it. Just don't tell anybody, but tell everyone.
Not
It's
everyone.
pretend.
Tweet it out.
Because we created money as human beings many thousands of years ago as a stand-in currency, as a stand-in for what we value. And what we value is a feeling. So it's all just emotions. And so when we know how to master our emotions and the feelings in our bodies, we can actually become incredible money masters. So back to what's happening. Okay, I'm worried about I'm going to lose my job, the economy, Like, how is this possible? Emily's telling me she took 2.5 months off and had her biggest year ever. Like, that doesn't apply to me, right? Like, we can really start to argue for our own limitations, which is just your sweet nervous system being like, that's unfamiliar. So therefore it feels unsafe. I'm just trying to survive out here. And what feels unfamiliar feels like I'm going to die. That's how we're wired, evolutionarily speaking. So there's nothing wrong with that wiring. It's actually super beautiful. And we can say thank you for keeping me safe, nervous system. And now what we're going to do is I am going to move us up to the edge of what I've experienced before, up to the edge of what feels edgy. That's why we call it edgy, uncomfortable, unfamiliar. And then at that point, I'm going to signal safety to my body so that I can regulate there and I can say to my nervous system, see, we just went to a new block. We're on a new block now. Look around. We're safe here. Do you think maybe you want to go walk to the next block? And then we can say, okay, yeah, I can do that. So, the Ziva meditation is a beautiful way to do that.
Well, I think yes, the Ziva will give them the foundation. It will allow their nervous systems to actually even feel safe enough to feel, but it doesn't let you skip the feeling step.
Nothing ever should. And if somebody
Yeah.
tells you that you can skip it, they're lying.
Yeah.
They're
But I think
bypassing.
100%. But the thing is, if your nervous system is actively in fight or flight, then your body actually won't let you feel those feelings. You can't even get to them often. So Ziva will just get you into a baseline of safety so that you can even hear what those feelings are. And then, I love the exercise that you gave where you said, every day get into a space of deep gratitude, deep presence, and say hello to your numbers. Say hello to your bank account. From a place of gratitude. But if truly the feeling is like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I'm late, I'm poor, I'm in panic, do not say hello to your numbers from that state. Like, would you say put on a ragey song, a sad song, maybe move through that alchemically and then say hello?
But for many of us, once your system is well wired to do this, it doesn't have to take a long time. I can really move through something into the other side of it, similar to my 5-year-old who goes full on collapse and to giggles in literally 90 seconds. So that's our original wiring. And so that's available for all of us. Not that everything has to be quick. We can luxuriate in these processes, but sometimes that's not practical if you have young children or, if you need to get to work or whatever. And so then after you've regulated enough to felt enough to find bliss or at least neutrality, then you can absolutely do what I recommended, which is to find and cultivate a sense of gratitude for the abundance you already have in your life. And I really recommend focusing on the abundance that is not necessarily financially related. The internal abundance, the invisible abundance, the relationships, the resourcefulness, the creativity, the knowledge, those things that no one could ever take from you, and really ground yourself in that awareness. Again, could be 30 seconds of just looking around inside yourself, looking around outside yourself, and being like, damn, yep, I've got a lot. And then engaging with your numbers, and then engaging with your financial goals, and then engaging in whatever financial questions you may have and whatever financial decisions you may have of should I take that job or not? Should I negotiate? What should I offer for my rate for this gig? All of those things, you will have all of your faculties about you and your power about you when you come from a regulated state. We do not get the cerebrospinal fluid flowing to our brain when we are dysregulated, when we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Our blinders go on because we're in survival mode and we cannot see possibilities. We do not make smart decisions, which is why a fearful state creates more fear. Because when we create from a place of scarcity and lack and from the same state we've been in, from the state of the past, we just keep creating a Xerox of the problem over and over and over again, which is why these tools, like intersecting the tools in between, quote unquote, problem and solution, is critical for alchemizing and finding new possibilities that possibly have never even been birthed before. That like you might be the first human to have that thought and do something in this way, but that wouldn't be available to you in a dysregulated state.
Oh, Kate, you're such a genius. I could listen to you all day. Okay, so I would love for us to talk a little bit about the like what's not changing around money. Like what for you are these are the laws, these are the principles, these are philosophies that likely were the truth 6,000 years ago when these rishis were cognizing the Vedas, and likely will be the truth 300 years from now when AI is running the land. So I'd love to hear your view on what is unchanging, and then how do we apply that into this ever increasing rate of change in this economic world that we're living in with AI and cryptocurrency and Ethereum and to your point, it's all made up, right? It's all made up, and we're going to start to see that more and more. And so how do we adapt with that instead of feeling like, oh, that's not real, that's not money? It's like, well, neither was gold at some point, and neither were walnuts or whatever we were trading that was valuable at the time. Neither is dirty paper. So we just love to hear your thoughts on that. And then I want to go into more 3D practical. Okay, what about my 401k? Should I invest in gold? Like that kind of stuff.
So, okay. Do you want me to tell you the quick story about my client?
Yes. Oh, right. The good news. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, the good news one. So this is a quick story. This is a woman who grew up in a family of addiction, struggled with alcoholism for decades, got sober pretty recently, has never had savings in her life, was homeless for a long time, and just really wanted to hand down a different money lineage to her kids.
Yeah.
And she has started, she has a job, but she also has started a personal decluttering business because she's actually really good at decluttering. And so she looked inside herself for her internal invisible resources that could be made visible in offering a service that is of value to other people because it ties on what they think is important, which is a clean, beautiful space. And as she learned to regulate her nervous system in the very way that we were describing, all of a sudden, she started showing up differently in her business, obviously, because that's what happens. And people started signing up for her highest packages, and she was getting all these paid clients. And for the first time in her entire life, she has a savings. This is a woman who was living on the street. Wow. As an alcoholic. And for the first time, she's got like this decluttering business and she has a savings and she is showing her children a new possibility because so much of our addiction and also, much of the behavior that creates difficult circumstances in the world comes from, deeply held traumas that we don't have the tools, folks haven't had the tools to heal. And so obviously, that's what you teach. And it's just really important to know that like at the core of it, one of the things that is never changing is how our bodies are wired.
Yeah. And that if your nervous system is dysregulated, then your relationship with everything, but especially money, is going to be taxed. It's going to be harder for you to be in infinite receiving if your fear and sphincter is closed. And then because you're doing from a place of fear, so you're doing more, right? Versus like 100%. Trust and flow, so you can do less, as the title of your book suggests.
Yes. And like, a good example from my own life, because we can think like, well, what does the nervous system have to do with like having more, right? Like obviously having more is better. right? Why am I sabotaging myself? Why am I not submitting invoices? Why am I not depositing checks? Why am I backing away from the sale? Why am I not doing a powerful pitch? Why am I flubbing my pitches, right? This happens. Why am I flubbing my auditions? How often does this happen? I know we can all relate to, like, as my mother likes to say, grabbing failure from the jaws of victory.
That's great.
Right? Why do we do that? Because and then I'm going to answer your question about, like, what's always the same, what's changing. We have these money stories that are embedded in our nervous system. And for example, in my money story, as my mom got really, really successful, my parents got divorced. And so there was like this imprinting of, oh, more money means a loss of love. And so just looking for, and I've done so much work on that, obviously, but looking in your own story for not only the content of what happened, but far more importantly, what did you make it mean? And therefore, what was the feeling? Because there are an infinite number of stories we can tell about any given circumstance. Yeah. And somebody else living my money story might have told a very different story, like my sister, who has a very different story about all the things that happened in our childhood, which we apparently shared, even though
allegedly
the same things happened. But like, if you listen to the two of us, we might as well have lived different lives. And anybody who has siblings knows that's pretty consistent. Mm-hmm. So we can pretty much trust that the stories we tell ourselves are up for interpretation.
Okay, so if you had to give us a homework assignment, which I would be so grateful around this, like, what would you, if this sounds like a really good journaling prompt, like what would be the pieces of this homework assignment?
The money love story writing process. It's also in my book, Money, a Love Story. But basically write down, like, in your journal, what was your money story? What did you learn about money? What were your first money memories? What happened? And what did you make it mean? Who was there? What were the circumstances? What was the feeling of that? Who were the main characters? How did they not serve you? How did they serve you? And where can you see echoes of that in your adult life? And then going back through and saying, for the parts that are the story part, there's like the facts, and then there's the interpretation. So for the parts that are the interpretation, asking yourself, is that true? Can I be absolutely 100% certain that that's true? And if the answer is no, then that's freedom. Because then you have any possibility to liberate yourself and write a new story. And when we write a new story about what happened in the past, we inevitably and without a lot of effort begin to write a new story in the present and for our future as well.
Wow, that feels really, really important. And to look at the lineage, to look at the inherited traits from our parents, and what was, like you said, not only the facts, but then the story around it. Like, wow, I feel excited to do that personally. Thank you for that.
Because those things are living in us, not only in our own inherited habits and patterns and stories, but they're actually living in our inherited nervous system patterns because of epigenetics and intergenerational trauma. Yeah. So we get to be the one that heals it 7 generations back and 7 generations forward.
And I'll just give an example of something that's coming up. Like, my mom was the breadwinner in our family growing up. So that was my imprint of like, oh, that's what's normal. This is what is usual. And she was the primary caretaker. And so I see myself like stepping into those roles and creating that reality. I'm like, wait, is this what I want? Like, do I want to do that? And then just really getting conscious about it, right? Of like, oh, do I choose this or not? So thank you for that homework.
Which is a great example of nervous system regulation is not being calm. It's being at choice. Mm-hmm. Because you get to choose to do the same thing if you want to, but not if it's not your authentic truth.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So let's touch on to like what's unchanging and what basically like what can we anchor ourselves to as the rate of change begins to increase?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, I don't know how much longer this will be true, but it was true in 1975 and it's still true today. And so I'm going to go with it's always going to be true, but we'll see. And that is that there are actually enough resources available for us all to live a really good life. Mm-hmm. So the lie of scarcity is a lie. Mm-hmm. There's enough.
Yeah.
there's not enough for us all to have like heaping mounds of more material goods than we need, but there is more than enough for us all to be well fed, have clean water, be safe, have a roof over our heads, have community, have touch, have the things that like really actually make a good life. So that is one ever change, non-changing. And we have, more population density than we've ever had before. And it still remains true. That's what the data shows us. There's enough. Now we have systems. Now here's the key piece. What is also unchanging is that systems, structures, and decisions created from buying into scarcity, that there's not enough to go around, create circumstances where there's a misdistribution of resources, where there's not enough. Because when you are creating from a place of believing that there's not enough, the results of the systems and decisions you create a circumstance in which there's not enough. So like corporate greed, the way the government set up, ballooned military spending, like these systems of mismanagement of resources and our distribution, our profound distribution problem, are because of systems that are dreaming into scarcity as opposed to dreaming into more than enough.
Thank you for highlighting that, because it's absurd. Like if you look at like the richest 100 people on the planet, it's something wild. Like they have like 50% of the global wealth is in 100 people's hands. Now that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's not far off. And so like talk about like a misallocation. 8 billion people, 100 of them have 50%. And so like, what? Like, that's not a resource problem. That's an allocation problem. And that obviously that level of hoarding is like a deep indicator of such scarcity that we have to shift that state of consciousness to reallocate the resources. Now, I interviewed a man named Jerry Simpson who started his own AI, and he believes that AI will actually help us to enter the age of abundance. That because AI will help us to reallocate the resources, because it is smarter than us and it will see like this is creating suffering. There is a way to redistribute. Here's what it would look like. So anyway, it's an interesting theory.
That's cool. That's cool. I love that. And so as you're listening to Emily say that, you may or may not believe it's true. And some people are more wired for criticism and cynicism. But notice, here's what happens. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the path, but the part of me that can believe it's true, we want to ramp that up, because the part in all of us that believes it is possible for us to live in a world where everyone's getting their needs met, the more we tune ourselves to that station, the more possibilities arise. Because just like a tuning fork, if you walk into a guitar shop and you've got a tuning fork buzzing with the letter C, the note C, all the C strings in that guitar store start to buzz as well, because like attracts like. So the more that we are tuned to the frequency of possibility and hope and abundance and plenty, the more solutions and other people who are available to be also vibrating at that frequency, they get the vibe and they start vibrating as well. And we can all come together in this like beautiful symphony.
Amen. Okay, so
which is also one of the unchanging things, because we're always going to be beings of frequency. Right. And so like the truth about knowing that fundamentally there's enough, and like being able to tap into the place inside you that is always tapped into source, which is your source. Money is not your source. The lie is that money is our source. The truth is that source with a capital S is our source, which is God, which is the divine, which is the universe, which is that which is bigger than us, but that which is also part of us. It's the fact that we are, not a drop in the ocean. We are the ocean in a drop. So that is also unchanging. When we can tap into that place, that is our infinite abundance. That is our place of creating infinite abundance, and all possibility flows from that place. And you don't have to have anything in order to access it. It is completely free. No one can take it from you, and no one can give you access. You've already had it since the moment you were born.
Amen. Amen. You are the ocean pretending to be the wave. You are God pretending to be human. You had access to that since the moment you were born and likely even before. And that is not dependent on a number in the bank account that you can access right effing now. And I love what you said of like the more of us that believe that we could be accessing or entering an age of abundance, the more of us that believe that it is in fact possible to live in a world where everyone's needs are met, the more creative of solutions will come in, because that is the thing we are dreaming into versus the collective story that we're being fed now, which isn't really serving anyone. Well, it's serving about 100 dudes. Anyway, really, really well.
They think so.
Right. They think so, but then
on
their
some
children,
level of consciousness,
yeah,
they think so. But the truth is, it's something that doesn't serve everyone, doesn't serve anyone.
Thank you for that reminder. That's a much bigger truth. Okay, so with the time that we have left, because I want to be respectful of your time, I would love for us to like bring it into the 3D of like some practical, tactical, like, Kate, I don't even know where to start. Like, should I be putting in my 401k? Should I be buying crypto? What about gold? Like with the money I have now and with the money that will inevitably be on the way as I implement these nervous system tools, like what should I be doing with that money to allow it to grow?
Okay, great. So systems. It matters less what your system is than that you have a system, because money loves clarity and money loves safety. And just like if you were looking to adopt, there would be a lot of checking to see if you have a safe household and if you're if you're a safe person and if you're emotionally stable and if you have a strong support system and, if your house is like relatively clean and all the right, like there's a lot of checking when you go to adopt a child or even a dog. And so money too is looking for a safe home. And a great way to indicate that you're a safe home is to take care of what you already have. So I recommend having a system wherein every single week, or if you get paid every other week, but if you're a business owner, I recommend doing it every week. Where when the money comes in, okay, this amount or this percentage goes to X, this goes to this goes to this, and that you have yourself set up so you're very clear on what your monthly nut is, or like what it takes for you to live on a monthly basis and what it takes for your business to run on a monthly basis. So clarity, 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 not from a place of judgment, from just a place of like, if I was like, what's in your fridge? You would go open your fridge and you would just like, tell me the contents of your fridge. We are going with that level of neutrality. You wouldn't be like, oh my God, I don't have asparagus. What's wrong with me? I'm such a failure at life. Like, no, just be like, that's not in there. So, or that is in there or whatever. So we're just itemizing like this is take the last 6 months and come up with this is what I spend on average on a monthly basis, business wise, personal wise, in categories. You could take it a step further and categorize them into needs and wants. I found this very helpful when I was first getting more of a handle on my money. I categorized my personal expenses into needs and wants, and I had one credit card and one bank account for needs and one credit card and one bank account for wants. So when the money came in, I put it into the needs account until I had the amount I need every month in my needs, and then everything extra went into wants. And it just felt very easy to manage from that perspective because for my nervous system, it made me know every single month I was handling my needs. And then it was very easy to know when I had extra. So that's like a simple, that's a simple one. So creating that level of clarity will then also let your money know, like, so let's say you make $80,000 a year now, and you're like, well, I'm not gonna, learn how to save or invest or whatever until I have more money. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because if you're not taking care of what you have now, you're not going to bring in more, because money doesn't feel that you are a safe place for it. The way we relate to money is very similar to the way we relate to anything. If we want to have a better relationship with our partner, with our kids, with our friends, we got to spend time with them. We got to look them in the eye. We got to love them. We got to pay attention to them. And so same with your money. So in all the ways that you can think of to pay loving attention to your money, do that. If that's hard or scary for you, regulate your nervous system and then do it. Which of course I recommend. And then in terms of when you look at the landscape of like growing wealth, I love this quote from one of my mentors, Barbara Hewson, who used to be named Barbara Stanny. She wrote The Secrets of Six-Figure Women and Sacred Success and Rewire for Wealth. And she said, wealth does not come from what we earn. Wealth comes from what we do with what we earn. So in general, you are not going to earn your way to wealth. Because I know plenty of people who make beaucoup bucks and are not wealthy because they do not have actual freedom. They just spend, they earn and then they spend right up until or past the earnings, and then they think they need to earn more and then they just spend right up until then, which is a nervous system pattern of scarcity, right? So they recreate scarcity. So instead, really looking at, okay, like how can I grow the money I have? And I'm not an investing expert, but I do recommend learning about the different asset classes. And the different asset classes are as follows: stocks, bonds, real estate, and commodities. Crypto is actually kind of in a different category because crypto is so new. We don't exactly know. It's like a new, it's new out there. And some, more old school money people say it's gambling. I do invest in crypto. But like anything, the general guideline is don't invest in what you don't understand. So if you don't get it, go learn, and then only invest when you understand, because money wants to feel safe. You would not let somebody you don't know and don't trust babysit your child. So don't go investing in something you don't understand. And with the world of the internet, you can learn about anything for free.
Yeah.
You're all
You could
smart
put a
people if
prompt
you're
into
in here.
ChatGPT and be like, hey, like, can you teach me about gold? Can you give me a quick synopsis on commercial real estate investing? Like,
Totally. But I will say this, I know that you teach tithing and like the 10%. I also really recommend that 10% of everything that you take home goes in an account for you, for savings, for cushion, for investing. Like 10% of everything off the top. Pay yourself first, pay yourself first, pay yourself first, pay yourself first. If I could say like one thing, and if I could go back in time and get myself to do something, which, my parents told me to do, but I just didn't do, early days, it would be pay yourself first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pay yourself first, and then if you can get that money, earning money, like it really is true that like it's length of time of interest. It's that compound interest over time.
It really is.
Where
time
magic
is on your
happens.
side. And if you're feeling like I don't know how to learn this stuff, I recommend start asking everyone you know.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do about investing? How do you manage your money? You don't have to ask people like, what do you make, right? I know those conversations are sort of considered societally not okay, even though I think they should be more okay. But like, just find out. I love asking people, what do you do to manage your money? What software do you use? What do you do when it comes in? Do you and your husband like combine it? Is it separate? What do you do in terms of your investing? Where are you keeping your wealth? I ask people these questions constantly. And it's interesting because you'll learn a lot. So start having more conversations about money in your daily life, and you'll be amazed how much you can pick up from the people who you just already know.
Yeah. And this feels like you gave me this advice a few months ago, and it's been riveting to me because you're right. Like we're told like, don't talk about politics, don't talk about sex, and don't talk about money. And meanwhile, we're just like, now we have this like sexually repressed, politically divided, financially uneducated world. And it's like, well, who are we supposed to learn about if we don't talk to our friends about it? So I agree. It's like, you don't have to ask like inappropriate questions or rude questions, not like how much do you make, or but asking like, what are you excited about financially? Like all those questions that you just listed are brilliant.
Yeah, like I love asking just, what do you do with your money? Who manages it? What systems do you use? How often you're like, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I could talk about it all day. And some of your friends are going to not have helpful things to tell you, and that's totally fine. But if you can start to ask people who you suspect might be smarter than you with money, that's going to be really where the gold is.
Yeah, that's a great, like discern, filter. Like you wouldn't take health advice from someone whose health you do not admire. Don't take money advice from someone you don't, think is stable. But maybe you could ask someone that you think is questionable to find out, like just as a discernment exercise.
For sure, because I've learned from people who are doing all kinds of different, you can always learn something from everyone.
Okay, great.
The other thing I would say is have like a weekly money date where it is your weekly time to look at your numbers, maybe with your partner if you have one, if with your business partner if you have one, and really have that time set aside and treat it with respect like you would a meeting with your lawyer. Just have your money date, look at your numbers, pay your invoices, invoice people at that time. Do like money action steps at the same time, like a standing date, and treat it with reverence and show up with as much pleasure and joy and fun as possible.
So sweet friends, I hope that you enjoyed this conversation that Kate and I had. And if you want to learn more about Kate and a really exciting offer she has coming up, you can go to katenorthrup.com/Emily, or she's on Instagram at Kate Northrup. And if you want my proven system to regulate your nervous system, not just around money, but in all things, to help your sleep, your sex, your immune function, your body age, you can go to zivameditation.com. That's ZIVA meditation.com, and you'll see all of our amazing meditation trainings there. So if you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to share it with a friend, and you can tag us on Instagram at Ziva Meditation. All right, sweet friends, I love you. I hope this has helped you to heal your relationship with money, and I will see you next week.